fellow brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Life-Changing Moments with Annette. I have a very special guest for you today. It's Dr. John Allen Coefield. He is the founder of and a Christian speaker through Royal Ministries. He is also the founder of the Christian Center of Near-Death Research. Dr. Allen Coefield experienced an NDE when he was 2 days old. He was adopted 4 months after his birth. He is a resident of Birmingham, Alabama, USA, and is happily married with 5 daughters and 11 grandkids. The story of Dr. John Allen Coefield, NDE, is a story of hope, love, positivity, and acceptance that is entertaining and beneficial for all people, regardless of religious affiliations or social standing. So let's welcome him, the amazing Dr. Allen Coefield. Welcome to my channel, Dr. Allen. Huh? Can I call you doctor or pastor?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's fine.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here. I really am.
Yeah, me too. Such a blessing to have you here. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. To discuss my NDE, I think the first thing I have to do is kind of lay some groundwork a little bit, because when you tell people that you've had a near-death experience at 2 days old, a lot of questions come up, such as, how did you know? And things of that nature. And so I'm going to start off by laying some groundwork to kind of give everybody an idea of how everything fell into place the way it did.
Okay.
I was born on August the 1st, 1964, at the Salvation Army Hospital in Birmingham, Alabama, USA. I had my near-death experience 2 days later. What had happened was I was taken in for the male circumcision procedure, and I bled out, which they did not know at the time that I had already developed high blood pressure as an infant. And so because I bled out, the official state medical records state that I was unresponsive for approximately 3 to 4 minutes. That's when they realized what was going on. That's when they took measures to bring me back, and that's everything on the physical side of it. Now, when I was basically going to be put up for adoption almost immediately after I was born. So that's the reason why I said the state medical records, because the state of Alabama basically took over my file and my adoption immediately after I was born. I was with my birth mother for several days there at the hospital, but after about 3 to 4 days, then we were separated, and I was taken to a foster home until I was adopted. I'm going to bring up something now that's going to make a lot of sense later.
Okay. I
was adopted 4 months later by the parents that raised me. That was on December 18th, 1964. Okay. When I tell my NDE story, I like to point that out at the beginning, because that comes into play later, and
yes.
It's very important. Okay. Yes. Now, as far as what did I experience that day, what I remember comes to me in like short video clips or pictures.
Okay.
And I've had these in my whole life. And because I was adopted, as I got old enough to remember that, or notice that I had these memories and these video clips and whatnot, I would ask my adopted parents, what is this? You know, I have a memory of a particular room or a particular person or whatever. You know, do you remember when this happened? And they obviously did not know. They tried to help me with it, but you know, they were limited as to what they would understand. After my biological parents passed away, when I was 33 years old, I met my biological mother for the first time. since birth. And throughout our visit, one of the things that happened was I asked her about these memories I'd had my whole life. And I described these memories in the places that I saw in detail, and her jaw hit the floor. She was like, one particular instance was I remembered a particular room that I was in that I remember what the walls were made of, concrete blocks. I remember what color the room was. I remember where the windows were. I know where the bed was, what the bed was made of. And I remember where the chair was in the room. I remember being carried around the room on someone's left shoulder. I remember chewing on hair on that left shoulder and playing with that hair on the left shoulder. And when I'm telling her this, she's like, how do you remember that? I said, I don't know. That's just a memory. And she goes, what you described, Alan, was your hospital room that you were in while you were in the hospital right after being born. Okay, so that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of how I know that this became an NDE, or this was an NDE, because we went over a bunch of other memories, and she started giving me examples of, well, yes, you're describing when this happened or when that happened. And so that was very helpful to me. Now, so let me get into actually what I remember, because even though I had memories over the years, I never figured that it was an NDE. I didn't know why I had these memories. I thought maybe there was I was some freak of nature that would remember certain things that some people don't or can't. But that's what I thought for a long time. And even after discussing this with her, I did not know that these were NDE related. Okay, but I'm going to tell you how all that comes together here in a minute. So what do I remember? I was in prayer and meditation with the Lord about 2 years ago. And it was during that time period that the Lord started showing me some of these memories that I had. The one I just described of the room, for instance. And I'm asking for the Lord to speak to me and let's share. And I just want to listen to him and things of that nature. And this picture of this room keeps popping up in my head over and over again. So I said, okay, Lord, fine. You're showing me this room. Why? There must be a reason why you want me to do this over and over again. And what he said to me was, and this is when everything started to fall into place. He said, what perspective do you have of the picture that you're seeing of this room? Now, keep in mind, I'm 2 days old when the NDE happened. You would think that if I had actual physical memory of the room, it would be from inside the baby crib. It was as though I was hovering over the room if you walk into the room on the right-hand side up near the ceiling. And after all these 50 some odd years of being alive on earth and having this memory, that was the first time I realized, wait a minute, I'm looking at this room from that perspective.
Oh, yeah.
And that's when I started, and actually I mentioned it to my wife later when I was talking to her about it, because all this kind of came on as a ton of bricks out of nowhere. And she said, well, Alan, that sounds like you had a near-death experience, or that you had died and you floated to the top of the room.
Penny said that. Your wife, she said that.
Right. That's what she said when I was telling her what I was experiencing. So, okay, that's how everything kind of fell in place. Now, let me just kind of go over the whole thing. My first memory, and again, these are from little video clips and pictures and things the Lord has enlightened me on since then. My first memory is being on a examining room. Examining, is that a new word? Okay.
Examining.
So being on an examining room. And I remember two nurses and a doctor. One nurse was very military-like, not real friendly. Matter of fact, that kind of uptight kind of person. The other nurse was younger, and she was very friendly and outgoing. And I could tell, even as an infant, this was somebody that I wanted to spend time with because I liked her. And the doctor was kind of matter of fact as well. I remember the room I was in, what the cabinets looked like, what the floor looked like, where the doorways were, and everything. And I remembered that the next memory I have is being above the room but my hospital room, and looking down over the room and seeing what I've seen in that picture in my mind for all these years. And then I look to my right where the windows are, and I don't see anything particular outside these windows, just white light outside these windows. And then an angel appears to me. Angel was adult female, and she had a blanket with her. And keep in mind, through all of this that I'm going to describe, at no time was I scared. At no time was I worried or stressed. It was like, I'm just comfortable. Okay, I just got born. I'm 2 days old. I don't have time to be mad or scared or anything like that. So anyway, this angel wraps me in this blanket where I can't see anything, and then I start to feel the momentum of movement, or feeling movement, and I could tell we were traveling at a high rate of speed, but I couldn't see anything. Seconds later, it stops, and she removes the blanket from my head, and I start looking around. And I'm in a room, and this room is, I would say, 30 foot wide by about 25, 30 foot deep. And in the middle of the room, kind of up against the wall, is an elevated platform type stage, you could say, with 7 pillars surrounding it. And inside those pillars, there was Jesus. And there were other people in the room, and I really don't make out who they were or their features or anything like that, but I could tell they were in the room, and I could see the white figures, off to the side. But the only person I really noticed was Jesus. And I remember noticing that was him. There's no doubt who it was. And as soon as I looked, because I'm being held in this angel's arms, and as soon as I looked over at Jesus, he says, "Bring him to me." She took me to him. He took me in his arms, and he held me on his left shoulder. And I remember thinking, "Oh, this feels good. This is comforting. I like this." And I remember there were moments where he was saying something, but I don't remember what they were. I don't remember anything that he said to me at that moment. And I do remember looking up to my left, up toward his face, and seeing his jawline, seeing the beard. And I think we've all seen pictures of this, of the drawings of Jesus that this young girl's doing, that everybody who has an NDE says, "Yes, that's him."
Yeah.
Yes, that's him.
What that Russian girl you meant that she
Yes, yes.
Does this look like Jesus in you?
Yes.
I have chills everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm looking at him from the angel's arms, just turn my head and saw him from across the room, that's what I saw. When I'm being held on his left shoulder in his hands, and I look up at him, I see the jawline, the ear, the side of the face, and same thing. So, the impression that I get was I was being held by him for several moments. There was communication that went on. For whatever reason, and I don't question the reason, I'm not allowed to remember what that communication was.
Oh,
and
telepathic.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to remember what it is, and that's okay. I'll remember it later when the time's right. But the next memory I have from that was being in another room alone, and I'm looking around, and I look off to my left, and I see a rock stone wall, and in that wall there's a tunnel. It kind of looks like an old railroad tunnel entrance. That's off to my left, and I look off to my right, and I see the room where Jesus was, where I just was.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of have a perspective. Okay, this is a dark room. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know why I'm in here, but I see that Jesus guy down the street. Okay, everything's going to be okay. Then I look up again to my right, and I see angels coming toward me. One angel was...
Angels?
I'm sorry?
Angels you saw?
Yes. Yeah,
From the right side, right? Where Jesus'
correct.
room was. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right. One angel was a young boy angel, dark-headed, um, estimate 5, 6 years old. He really wasn't all that thrilled with me. He kind of had the attitude of, I'm here because I got to be. The girl that was with him, maybe 12, 13 years old, and she was totally engulfed in me. She, everything I did, she had a funny reaction to. She'd laugh hysterically. She would,
Really?
yeah, I mean, she was just having a blast, you know. And from what I remember, we played for a while, and she may have tickled me. I don't know. I'm a baby. I was probably kind of cute. I don't know. But she's having fun. And then at one point, she looked at me and she says, "Okay, John, it's time to go back to your body." And I didn't question her. I started to follow she and the little boy angel into this tunnel. And every now and then they would stop and turn around and say, "Okay, John, keep coming with me. We got to go to your body." Okay,
So,
now, couple of,
how is that? So they were not carrying you. Sorry,
no, I was following them.
you were following. So that means you were like walking as a baby or as an orb, or could you
I don't
see
really know.
yourself? Or
No, I don't feel like I wasn't crawling. I wasn't crawling like a baby. I have the impression that I probably was floating
okay,
because I
that
don't
makes
really remember. I really wasn't aware of how I was feeling, but
sense.
I know I was more so off the ground, so it wouldn't have been um, crawling or anything like that. Now, keep in mind, the angel kept saying, "Come on, John, we got to go to your body."
Mhm.
My name wasn't John yet.
No. Oh.
My name now, after my adoption, is John Allen Coefield. When I was born, my birth mother gave me the name of David Lee.
Okay.
What that means is, 2 days after I was born, heaven already knew that I was going to be adopted and already knew what my name was going to be. And I was already being addressed by that name that I wasn't going to get for another 4 months.
Yeah.
When the Lord was showing all this to me 2 years ago, I was driving. I had to pull off the side of the road. I was absolutely floored. You ever get that feeling when you come to the sudden realization something and you feel like it hits you in the chest and you're like, wow, that was it. There's a lot of things that I take from this experience. There's a lot of lessons and whatnot, but that was the one thing that I believe the Lord allowed me to see, to let me know that this is not going to be something that I'm making up. It's not something that my mind conjured up on its own. It's something that really happened, because 2 days after I'm born, heaven already knows what my name is going to be.
Yeah.
And that says so much about, you know, who God is, what we are in relationship to God, and how He has our future in His hands.
Wow.
So anyway, obviously I made it back to my body and stayed there in that hospital for several days afterwards. And if you remember at the beginning, I said I had memories of my birth mother carrying me around on her left shoulder.
Yeah.
You remember Jesus carried me on his left shoulder?
Yes, I thought as well. On the left side, you said.
Mm-hmm. Right, correct. So I asked my birth mother, I said, okay, after these memories, was I a cranky child? was I, noisy but angry? And she said,
Yeah.
and she didn't, and again, she didn't know about this near-death experience, okay, when I'm talking to her about it. I said, well, what did you do to quiet me down?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, after you came back from your procedure, there was only one thing I could do that would make you quiet down and go to sleep, and that was to carry you on my left shoulder. That meant, okay, I was carried on the left shoulder of the Son of God. The only place I feel comfortable is I'm on the left shoulder of my birth mother.
Yeah.
That's where I'm chewing on her hair, playing with her hair, things of that nature. And so those two tie in together as well. So, but that was that's pretty much the story. I like I said, I had all these individual memories that weren't tied together for a long time, and it wasn't about 2.5 years ago that the Lord brought them all together and showed me that, okay, we're going to show you enough of what happened so you understand what happened and why it happened. So
when did you start having these memories? Which age were you? What age were you?
I would say as far back as 4 years old.
And it was more just like clips and like in the videos like that. It was not really like now you can say it like it happened like this, but before
Right.
it was just like, was it more getting, you know, the longer, the more you have more memories, or?
Yeah, and then the older I got, the more memories I had. You know, we all have those times where we may go somewhere or meet somebody and we have that deja vu feeling. It's not like that. It's where you're living everyday life. Your mind's on work. Your mind's on you know, going on vacation or whatever, and then all of a sudden you have a memory, and a memory that your body reacts to, and you have no idea where it came from. You know, for instance, like, you know, let's say you may have been on some awesome vacation sometime with your family, and you're driving down the road in your car and you're not thinking anything about it. All of a sudden you hear a song come on the radio that was popular when you were on vacation. All of a sudden all those memories flood back in because you're hearing the song. Same thing with this. As I would get more and more of these memories to me over the years, the emotions associated with it would come back as well. But it wasn't until about 2 years ago that the Lord actually showed me enough of all the memories that I'm allowed to see to where it actually all made sense.
Was it through a prayer meditation?
It was.
Well,
It was basically started off as just prayer, and then my telling the Lord, I want to be quiet. I want to be still. I just want to focus on you. If there's anything that you have to share with me at this point, I'm willing to listen, and I want to listen. And you know, I'm like most people. We will tell the Lord that in meditation sometimes, and not a whole lot happens. Sometimes. That particular chance, it came in like a raging bull. Like, here's a specific message for you, and here's why.
That's really fascinating, because your story, you know, it's fascinating, unique, because I never heard a story like yours until now. I've seen so many interviews, so many articles about near-death experience, but something like this, you know, all the babies, everyone, when we are born, we are still in the process of developing our five senses, while you then, I think it's because our soul is already, you know, doesn't matter what age we are, our soul is the same. Is this maybe the explanation? Because some people would not understand this, like skeptical people. So I believe what you say, but how can you explain that in a way that our viewers will understand that, or just, you know, like, there is a possibility that it's like this?
Well, the first thing I would say is, and I do get asked that question a lot, is, okay, you were 2 days old. How can you remember?
Yeah.
Your brain has not developed enough to where your brain can welcome in what would eventually later become memories. And I have to fall back on something the Lord shared with me through this roughly a 72-hour period that I had what I call my awakening. When he said, what you remember is not from the physical. What you remember is from your spirit, your spirit memory of it. Our spirit memory, it always stays with us. You know, you have people that when they're close to death, sometimes they say, I feel like I'm going home.
Yeah.
Well, that ties into that spirit memory. They're not physically aware of it, but inside their spirit, they know where they're going and they're at peace with it. The best answer I can give to it is it's your spiritual memory that you're remembering from, not your physical. If it was physical, it wouldn't be possible. If it was physical, and if I really was remembering things physically, I remember it from being inside the baby crib.
Yeah.
I don't ever remember being inside a baby crib.
Yeah, that's all. That explains too.
Right.
Seeing yourself from the ceiling like that. Before 2 years ago, how were you compared to these 2 years when you found out, yeah, I had this near-death experience? How did it change you as a person?
Well, I was always raised as a Christian.
Okay.
My father was a Methodist minister, United Methodist minister. I grew up in the church. I strayed a few times on my own, but I eventually came back, and like I tell my wife now, we'll be talking about the Lord, and we'll say, look, I said, our relationship with Christ is so much in our DNA. There's nothing we can do to ever get away from Him. It doesn't mean we're going to behave correctly all the time. It just means, we're here with Him. We know we're going to stay with Him. But how did it affect my life? Off and on, have been working in ministry for all these years. I've worked in everything from deliverance ministry to counseling ministry, Christian counseling, youth ministry, associate pastorship, and within the Methodist denomination, and other things. And the only thing that really changed was, and it's not really a change, it's just a different way of looking at it, was that after the Lord showed me that what my memories were of the near-death experience, and I received so many different types of confirmations about it, it shifted me from saying, wow, these are things that I as a Christian have faith in, to I as a Christian have faith, but these things I've laid my eyes on myself. So it confirmed a lot of the things that I've had previously in faith, which makes the areas that you stay in faith in that much stronger. For instance, okay, I live in Alabama, part of the U.S. Let's say I've heard of this place called Chicago. I've heard people talk about Chicago. Chicago may be a great place. I don't know anything about it. Then all of a sudden one day I go there and it's like, oh, this place really does exist. Okay. So now I'm going to be more confident when I hear somebody talk about St. Louis or New York, because, wow, I just experienced Chicago. And all I had previously was faith in Chicago. I have faith in New York. This person's talking about New York. I'm going to believe it. Well, that's how it's affected me as far as my spiritual beliefs with Christ. That's really the best way I know to put it.
What do you do exactly in your ministry? Do you help people? Could you explain a little bit about your ministry?
Sure.
Can they find you on Facebook, or how? Because I have you as a friend on Facebook, and I found you there. Yes.
Yeah, we've got a pretty good team going. I'm really proud of our associations with you and Peggy, and we've got another pastor that works with us in our ministry. His name is Rod Walton from London. He uses near-death experiences and stories to help people who are survivors of loved ones passing, to help them understand where they are and help give them peace and confidence and strength through the bereavement period, and more. So he does an awesome job in that area. What we do, like I said, keep in mind, I've worked in ministry off and on for about 30 some odd years. And after a couple of weeks of coming to terms with the fact that all these memories are a near-death experience, most people who have near-death experiences, they don't just say, well, I had a near-death experience. That's neat. I have all these memories. Let's go on. Let's enjoy life.
Yeah.
You have a lot of people that have a hard time adjusting to the fact they've had a near-death experience.
Yes, no, yeah, it's a little bit traumatic for them somehow.
Right.
Maybe because they don't understand what it was, and people will not believe them. That's also a thing, It's hard for like people like you.
Right, and there are people that I love dearly that I don't even bring up the subject. But I'm blessed in that my wife saw it. She knows the person that I am. not just the person I am when we're out in public and doing things related to ministry, but the person I am when we're at home too.
Yeah.
So she knows that if I start talking about something like this, it's real.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we both understand that there are going to be things that I'm going to think, feel, react to, whatever related to my near-death experience that she's not going to relate to.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, it's good for me to have contacts and people to talk to. A lot of people are surprised that, you know, the divorce rate for people who have had near-death experiences is pretty high.
Yeah, but how is that possible? I mean, is it because their interest has changed or the priorities has changed? It's like, you know, there are now in between that dimension and Earth. It's like they don't know where they belong. And I heard
Yeah,
this a lot.
there's a lot of possibilities as to why that would happen. The divorce rates are real high amongst people who've had near-death experiences. Just because you've died and you've gone to heaven, or you died and you've met and talked to Jesus, when you come back doesn't mean everything back here is going to be okay. Everything's smooth and fine, and we're going to be, you know, walking on clouds and eating marshmallows all day in peace. Your life here is still going on.
Yeah, it's still the same.
So what we do with our ministry that we had, and I started the ministry because I got to a point where it's like, I'm telling my wife, look, you know, the Lord has blessed me with all this knowledge of what happened, what's going on, and the emotions attached to it and everything. I said, now that I have this knowledge, what am I supposed to do with it? Just put it back in my memory and say, okay, that was great, let's go on, or use it for the Lord to help minister and lift up others. And that's what we chose to do, and that's what the Lord has shown us that He's wanting us to do. So what we do is,
sorry, don't you think this is the purpose of you remembering your near-death experience, to be able to do such things and help others? Because that
exactly.
is something very good what you're doing, you know. I heard the Christian world, they don't believe in near-death experience. Is that true? Because Catholics, they don't believe too. Yeah.
It's according to from what I found, it's actually that comes down to each individual pastor and each individual church. That's whether they do or they don't. I would say probably those who will openly say they do believe in near-death experiences are probably 15% of all of Christianity. Yeah, it's frustrating because I've got a list of dozens of scripture references and passages in the Bible that talked about near-death experiences. But I guess it's okay to ignore those because it's not comfortable to talk about in the church. That's one of the reasons why we started this ministry. And that is, you know, we're not licensed counselors, we're spiritual counselors. This is something I've done for many years. And what our number one goal is when people have a near-death experience, they've usually had two traumatic events happen. The first traumatic event was what caused them to almost die in the first place. The second traumatic experience is the near-death experience. What some people are going to find when they have a near-death experience is the things that they believed in, things that they held close to, things they might have even had faith in, may be totally different than what they've grown up with.
Yeah.
And because of that can be a shock to the system.
Yeah.
It's a shock to the system physically and emotionally while you're recovering from the first trauma of what caused you to get there. That can cause some problems.
Yeah.
So with the counseling that we do, the first thing we do is listen. Tell us about your near-death experience. Ask questions, things of that nature. If we find that through the course of talking to them, we're getting off into behavioral issues, behavioral problems, then that's when we're going to refer them to licensed counselors. But if it stays on pretty much a spiritual aspect of it, or just a discussion aspect, then that's where we're going to talk to them and try to help them get back to what we call a baseline. Help them understand that what you experienced is real. It will always stay with you, and it's okay. Okay, you're not a freak. You're not experiencing something that some church told you only the devil sins.
Yeah.
You actually experienced it. Okay, but now let's go back. While this other still remains, let's go back and remember. Hey, you like dogs. You like your grandkids. Here's what you like to eat for food, for dinner or for food. Your family, they're your nucleus. Let's don't let one go for the other. Let's prioritize.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what we do to help people with.
Amazing what you're doing, and that is not yet so long, huh? Your ministry, that is quite a new ministry.
Yeah, this particular ministry, let me back up. This particular ministry has been around about 5 years.
Oh, 5 years
But
already.
the near-death experience aspect of it and the counseling aspect of it's only been around about 2 years.
Okay.
And let me throw this out there also. We don't charge for our services. If people wish to make a donation, we're more than happy, okay, to accept it and thank them for it. But we're not even going to ask for that, okay? Because we realize we're talking about your death experience or your near-death experience is the most intimate thing you're ever going to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And either you die and you don't come back, or you do die and then you do come back with knowledge and experiences and trauma and all the good, the bad, and everything that comes with it. You can't put a dollar figure on the counseling that somebody might need,
Mm-hmm.
or the services somebody might need for that type of experience. We don't want dollars to stand in the way of somebody getting help if they need it, even if it's just to talk to somebody. Also, we have a list of things that we can send out to pastors who are ready to get out of the Stone Age and get into realizing that, yes, near-death experiences are real. The Lord is revealing himself to people via near-death experiences in a modern age.
Mm-hmm.
And here's some information that can help them with counseling people who have been through near-death experiences and hardships, and maybe even family members of people who have had near-death experiences. So, we have a lot of resources in those areas for pastors as well. So we do it out of the love for people. We do it out of the love for humanity. We do it out of the recognition of the serious spiritual need that has arisen because these have become so prominent.
Okay. Are you also do you also have there are lots of Facebook pages about near-death experience. Are you also a member of those? Some of those? Because there
Some
are
of those,
people like there are really like they're still processing it, it's if it's long time ago or just new, it's difficult for them to process. They have so many questions, and maybe
right.
If being a member there, you have a lot of knowledge about this will be
Mm-hmm.
great.
Yeah, actually, I am a member of quite a few Facebook groups, I would say. As far as I'll be a couple of ministry groups as well. There are some near-death experience groups that I'm really, really careful about being associated with.
Really?
Mainly because there are some people who take near-death experiences and try to fit them into it has to be this way or it didn't happen train of thought. And I've had people who have heard my interviews and have come to me from certain groups and said, that's a great story, but it doesn't work that way.
Really?
And I'm like, you weren't there. You don't know if it works that way or not. All I can do is share what happened to me. And that's the only thing anybody can do is share what happens to them. We are finding that the Lord is not giving everybody the same near-death experience.
No. Yeah, each experience is unique, and yet you're
And
experiencing like the soul went out and your body is like
Mhm.
it's still the same thing but different kinds. And
Right.
I never had near-death experience, but I believe what you say, and also that the thing that why you could still remember. My only explanation for that is because our soul is perfect. It doesn't age.
Right. There's no time. and it will always remain. Yeah, but
But you also have validations, huh? It's not
right.
all. It's not like you're saying like, this happened to me, okay. But you had
Mhm.
validations. You could read records from the
Yes,
hospital or from your baby when you were still
actually,
a baby.
that was actually one of the one of the things I did. I come from a journalist background,
Oh, really?
and so when all this comes to play, I'm thinking, okay, the Lord is showing me this. I know the Lord's voice when I hear it. Okay, Lord, I trust you. So don't think I'm fixing to take this off in another direction, but I'm gonna go check it out myself over here too. And
Okay.
I tried to contact the hospital. The Salvation Army Hospital in Birmingham, Alabama does not exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It was torn down around 1970, 72, somewhere, I think. But the medical records for my adoption were sent to the Alabama State Capitol. The medical records for my medical procedures were sent to the Salvation Army Hospital historic, big words here today, history department in Atlanta, Georgia. So I found out who those people were. I called them, and yes, they do have all this on record at the Salvation Army Hospital um, records department in Atlanta, Georgia. And then I contacted the state of Alabama, and I said, "Here's what I am being told. I need to know anything that was put in the records related to this medical procedure and what happened between that time and the time I was discharged from the hospital." And the person read the notes to me, word for word. And of course, I'm not going to say who the person was because they weren't supposed to do that. But but they said, yeah, this procedure happened. This is, all details. And immediately following the procedure, patient was unresponsive for 3 minutes. And I forget the medical lingo they get into, but they talk about how they had to bring me back. And that brings up another question. Okay, if I died and they had to bring me back, why didn't they tell my birth mother? Because she was there.
Yeah.
Because I was already slated to be put up for adoption. So the only people that were responsible to be reported to was the state of Alabama.
Oh.
And they have all the records of it. So
And
a lot of interesting little twist in this whole story.
everything comes into order,
Mm-hmm.
all your questions, and at the end, you have all the answers. And what did your biological mom thought about this? It's like, oh, how could
Well,
he know this? And it's almost
that's
impossible. I don't know if she was also someone who believes in God, or yeah.
let's put it this way. Not for any reasons associated with this. She and I don't talk anymore. Um, and we have we know each other. We have known each other for quite a few years, but because of the differences in things after the adoption and whatnot, which I'm not going to get into, I just felt like it's best that we have known each other, we part ways. However, when I first met her and I started going over all these memories I had with her,
Yeah.
neither one of us had a clue that it was part of a near-death experience. So we both wondered, how does he know this? How does he understand this? How does he have this memory? That was when I was 33 years old, was when I first met her as an adult. And I think after that particular visit, when she was telling me about these things, or when I was telling her about the memories, I think we both came away from that meeting going, wow, I've got a great memory. And that was it. Because even then we didn't tie into it that it was a near-death experience. So
Listening to you, I'm still processing, about your experience, how much more how to process that. It's like, until 2 years ago, it was very clear. But why do you think God has just why he chose only 2 years ago to make it clear for you? Why, I mean, does he have his purpose? You believe in that?
I think the Lord, number one, I believe that everything that we go through in life is building us to something else.
Mm-hmm.
I think, whether it's knowledge, whether it's physical experiences, whatever, we all we keep graduating up. And I think for whatever reason, I had to go through certain things in ministry and outside of ministry to the point to where I would be ready for this, for him to say, okay, now I'm going to let you know what's going on.
Yeah.
Because if he had shown me this when I was 18, I would have probably said, wow, that's cool. But now I hear this, and now I experience this, and I say, oh Lord, you've shown this to me. How can I serve you with it? So that's I think that's part of why he waited so many years.
So God works in His plan, not in,
He does.
in His time,
he's always
in His plan.
Right, and he's always right. I mean, he's always got the timing down. We don't always agree with it at that moment, but we have to admit that he's right. Because we try to figure out things in our own time, at our own pace,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, no, no, trust me, just trust me.
Yeah,
and then when he comes through, then that's when you say, okay, now I see why.
Yeah.
But
And sometimes we may never know why, but everything, God has His purpose, and we just have to believe in Him. That's what I learned now, from this journey too.
it's just amazing to me that he's given me this at this point, because I think another reason why he's opened all this up to me at this point is he knows I have a willing heart. I have a servant's attitude toward helping people.
Yeah.
And the more you look at what's going on as far as near-death experiences go, as far as the overall NDE world, you see more and more and more and more people coming out and talking about their near-death experiences, more so now than ever.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's because they have more mediums in which to share these stories. I think it's because it's happening more. And I think the reason why it's happening more is that is God's way of saying, look, we don't have a whole lot of time left on this earth, whether it's our individual life and death, or whether it's, getting to the tribulation and the rapture and things of that nature. We don't have a whole lot of time left. And he's trying to show people who he is.
Yeah.
And what he is. And it says in his word that, in the latter days, knowledge will be increased. It doesn't necessarily say what kind of knowledge, it just says knowledge. I believe it's knowledge of him, knowledge of his purpose. And because of that, this is one of the things that's happening and is exploding all over the place, because he's trying to let people know, look, you've heard this about me, you've heard that about me, you've heard, this lie, you've heard this story, you've heard this half-truth, whatever. Here's the truth. I'm going to bring some of you to heaven individually, and we're going to sit and talk, and I'm going to show you what this is all about. It's about love, it's about acceptance, it's about respect, it's about value, and I'm going to show you this in a way where you can take it back to earth and share it. That's what I'm thinking. That's why I think, so much more of this is happening. And I think he's also opening the doors for more people to go into NDE related ministries for that reason.
Yeah.
Because as we all know, and I think you touched on it earlier, there are a lot of groups out here that are going to try to persuade you into other religions from it, or other, I hesitate to say New Age, because most people who think they're pushing New Age can't even tell you the definition of New Age. Which I've had that many times. It's really hilarious. But, bottom line is, as long as you come away from your near-death experience understanding there is a God, he does love you. He's He wants to take care of you, and the fact that you had a near-death experience and came back to earth is evidence of that. Where can you? What do you lose? You know, where do you go from there? Share it. Share it with others. You don't have to write a book. You don't have to go on speaking tours. You don't have to, go on television. You can just talk to your neighbors.
Yeah. That's the nearest, your neighbor.
or just rely on the Lord to bring people across your path that need it.
Oh, yes. Yes.
That's huge.
That is the reason for this channel. And I have no words, for this, what he's doing in my life. I'm forever grateful. Have you gained any abilities or any gifts you received from heaven? And
one is what you just described, being empathetic, being able to understand what other people are feeling, and in some cases even feeling what they're feeling.
Yeah.
It's a blessing, and it's hard as well.
Yeah, I know that it's hard because in the beginning, to be honest, I've been crying a lot, reading all their comments, and I've always been a compassionate person, but how come, since I'm back with God, that it has maximized, and I cry with all those things, and I was really asking myself, is this now good, or is this not good for me?
I think one of the most important things to remember with that, and I have to adhere to this as well, is keep a healthy balance of your time and your emotions.
Okay.
You can't let being empathetic, feeling what other people feel, and all their emotions, you cannot let it become bigger than those things that matter to you in life. It doesn't mean you can't have moments where it is. It just means you've got to keep a healthy balance. Okay, if you've got periods of time where you're talking to people who are dealing with grief, or who have come back from a near-death experience, or disability, or whatever, it's okay to engulf yourself in that while you're helping them and be a tool for the Lord in that. But at the same time, you've got to also step back occasionally and say, okay, now is when I'm going to recharge my batteries. Now is when I'm going to be refreshing and recharging my spirit. Because, and think about what Jesus did. Can you imagine what we feel for one individual that's going through a loss? Think what he feels.
Yeah.
The God in him is what made that person.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's more connected to him than we are. But
he is Jesus,
Yeah.
He can carry a lot, and we are just human, and I don't know.
And people ask, why does God allow things like that? God, let's go back to this way. Why did the human beings allow it to come in? Is the question.
Yeah.
We didn't have to invite it into the kingdom that God created.
No.
But through original sin, we did.
Yeah.
So we can't ask God. God wants to help us and be our strength and be our guidance and be our healer and all these things. But, if you look at, I know when I worked in deliverance ministry, I dealt a lot with people who were trying to leave occultic practices and satanic practices. And people would say, how does a person get so involved in that? Because at some point they made a choice to. And the spirit realm will honor our choices. If you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, the angels, the Holy Spirit, Jesus will accept that choice and will act within that choice with you. Same thing goes for the opposite. So anyway, I'm getting off the subject a little bit, but I think the important thing is to keep a healthy balance in and of yourself. Recognize when your batteries are running low, because that's
I'm not so good in that, but I need to grow too. I need to to learn
Right.
that. It's a process,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, when you start recognizing the signs of burnout, when you start getting to the point where nothing excites you anymore,
Mhm.
nothing really matters to you anymore. You can't remember the last time you had a good laugh, and everything just puts you on edge. Those are signs that you've got to back up, and God understands that. He understands that there's people He's going to bring across your path for you to minister to and to help.
Mhm.
But there's going to be times where you've got to step back. And if you can't meet someone's counseling or just witnessing or whatever needs at that moment, a lot of times God will have somebody else available for you to send that person to that can help so that you can get the rest you need.
Okay.
But yeah, but your original question was how many do I have any special gifts since then? One is it's being empathetic. The other one is one that I know is somewhat controversial within the Christian realm. I'm not going to call it psychic abilities.
Uh-huh.
A lot of times we call it prophetic knowledge or gift of knowledge, and I believe that works within us within the gifts of and the source of the Holy Spirit. But there are times where yes, I will know what somebody's about to tell me about their experience before they even start talking. There have been numerous occasions when I would see somebody in public and the Lord would say, go over and talk to that person. And I'd go over and just talk to them, and they'd be real receptive to talking, just, talk about the weather or whatever, and say, I don't know why, but the Lord told me that you've lost a child. And they would say, well, yeah, actually I did about 3 years ago.
Mm.
And that opens the door for me to let the Holy Spirit go through me into helping that person meet their needs whatever they need. I'm also a big believer in what I call in our Facebook group. I do this a lot. I'll say, be a blessing.
Yeah.
Don't ever.
Yes, I read that. That's very nice.
Yeah, and it all goes back to when I went through a period of time where I was really down. I was really going through a lot of hardships, and I really didn't know if I even wanted to live anymore. And I remember going into a grocery store, getting what I needed, walking out of the grocery store, and as I walked out, I had to stop at the curb because there was a car coming by, and the car came and it stopped right in front of me. And in the back seat was a little girl, maybe 4 or 5 years old. And she looked up at me and I looked down at her and she just went and smiled. That carried me for 6 months. Just that little bit, that little smile, just that little acknowledgement that, hey, here's another human being. Hi, how are you? That it was huge. We don't know how huge it can be for somebody to put a sticky note with a smiley face on it on their computer at work. Never underestimate how big something can be when it comes to being a blessing to somebody. That's one. That's one huge thing that the Lord has shown me, and that I've experienced myself as well. I too have been through loss. I've lost a daughter to a car accident. I lost a wife about 10 years ago. Both parents, grandparents, adoptive and biological. And so, I've been through a lot of loss, and it can break you if you don't remember where foundation is. That's some fancy words for something that can be a lot easier said than done. But if you've got that foundation to hold on to through whatever your hard times are, you're going to be okay. It's still going to hurt. You're still going to feel lost. You're still going to have some challenges, but at least you know where you're eventually going to end up.
Yeah.
And with us, that's through Christ and our peace in Him.
I made my foundation in God. I said, if I cannot carry my loads anymore, He's gonna carry it for me to
right.
To charge some batteries, like you said, and carry on, because at the end we still have to do it. We are still in flesh and blood, humans. So I'm really
And
sorry to hear about your story,
yeah,
with your daughter. Reading about that, I cried while you texted me and I read that. I mean, yeah, I cannot really imagine how it feels, because
well,
maybe I can just say, yeah, I can imagine, but being the person who lost his daughter, I, that's the worst for me.
it was for 10 years after it happened. I would not ever even have admitted that I even had a daughter because I couldn't talk about it. But let me tell you what kind of God we have. Okay, let me tell you about holding on to that foundation. That happened back in 1988. After that happened, it led to a divorce, and I went the next roughly 30 some odd years wondering if ever I would have another child.
So you were that
Wondering,
was she was your only child.
mhm. I went 30 some odd years wondering if I would ever have another child. I got to the point to where I gave up on ever having another child. I gave up on ever being a grandparent.
Mhm.
After my previous wife passed away and Penny and I met and got together, the Lord brought Penny to me in ways that were an answer to prayers going back all the way to 1988. Because I'd always been partial to girls. I'd always been partial to daughters. And I'd wanted grandkids so bad, and I'd just given up on all of them. But in 2013, when Penny and I got married, after my previous wife passed away, I inherited 5 daughters and 11 grandkids.
Yeah.
That's the kind of God we have. So as bad as that loss was back in the 80s, and as horrible as it was, and as damaging as it was to me physically, when I look now at where I am today with these awesome grandkids that I've got and these beautiful 5 daughters, and I look at where I was and all the prayers over the years, I'm like, yeah, don't tell me there's not a God, because I'm seeing the fruit of it right here in front of me. And so, those are the things we learn along the way. That if we just hold on to that foundation, it's going to come together one way or another. Not always easy. It'll come together. But yeah, getting back to that question again, I know I keep going off subject. And being empathetic, having a I'm going to use the word prophetic, even though it's a perfect spirit about me, shall we say, to be able to, for the Lord or the Holy Spirit to share things with me in advance of me knowing them, or advance of me hearing them. More so to prepare me spiritually or however, for what I'm going to encounter. One of the prayers that I'll say quite often every day is, Lord, please prepare me today for what you have me to face tomorrow.
Oh, that's nice.
And and I've seen him do it a lot. Nothing surprises me, thank goodness. But um, but anyway, those are I would say the gifts or the things that the Lord has given me, that have been. I think they were probably with me all along, but I think they were magnified after He made me aware of the fact that what I had experienced was the near-death experience,
Mhm. Yeah.
and then told Him that, Lord, I want to use what you shared with me to help others with. Well, that's when He just kind of brought all that other up more to the forefront.
Yeah.
So.
That's nice. Thank you so much, Dr. Allen, for sharing your beautiful, sad and yet turned out to be a beautiful story. And I'm always so emotional. I'm very sorry. I'm not
Yep,
so
that's
good in,
okay.
and being so empathetic. Then I feel when you just said, I felt that pain and that moment. And your final words about the whole experience, and why do you want to to tell our viewers your story?
I think the most important thing as to why I want to share this story
Mm-hmm.
is to give hope, to give encouragement, to give support. We all have our challenges going on in life. Some of them are life and death situations. Some of them are financial situations. Sometimes it's bereavement. And God bless the people from the Ukraine. They're going through things we can't imagine. And we obviously all pray that it stops there and soon. But in the midst of all of these things that are going on, we have a God that loves us, a God that wants to protect us and guide us and provide for us. And his word is filled full of promises along all those subjects. Mm-hmm. And if there's anything that I can do that brings peace, encouragement, support to one other person on earth through what we do as far as this ministry goes and the telling of my story, then so be it. I don't have to be somebody who's going to go out here and bless millions. That's up to the Lord to decide. Mm-hmm. And I don't question that. I just tell my story, and he gives me the path and the word to do so. But we've got to return to focusing on love. Love each other. Love people like us. Love people not like us. Love people who disagree with us.
That is the most difficult and yet very rewarding when you can love your neighbors. I think that is the love is the key,
right,
to everything. So you said this. Yeah. Thank you so much for saying this.
Yeah, I mean, the Bible tells us that if we feed others and we clothe others and we take care of medical issues, we take care of all these other issues, but we don't have love, all these other things we're doing, in Allen's terms, is just making just a bunch of noise.
Yeah.
It's empty. Okay, you got the deed done, but what's the purpose?
Yeah.
Well, what was your motivation? Our motivation has got to be love for fellow human beings. And that's why we do what we do. That's why I'm doing this as far as the ministry goes. Again, I'm not in it for the money. I have no plans to write a book. If somebody else does, good for them. I wish them a lot of success. I'm not against writing books.
Yeah.
But that's not why I'm here. I just want to help people.
Yeah.
And I want them to know that there is a God that loves them, cares about them. And just like God showed me that he loves me and cares for me by me realizing that I was being called by my adoptive name 4 months before I got adopted while I was in heaven. He wants to show other people the same thing.
Sorry?
So
the last part?
He wants to show other people the same thing as to how much he loves them and how much he cares about them.
Yeah.
And he'll do it in ways that they can relate to the most.
Exactly. I'm so blessed to hear this story. This is the nicest thing with what I do, because every time I feel like, life is this, and then I hear again, it's like God is keep on sending people to me to remind me, like, don't forget, don't give up, Annette. God is there. Mm-hmm. And this is so nice. So I will, I keep on doing this.
You do an awesome job of it. I remember watching the first video I watched from your channel and thinking, this is really good. You've got a great spirit about you that is contagious.
Contagious. But the only thing I have that I hope that the viewers will not be disturbed, because I get so emotional, and that is just me, and I cannot hide that. I'm sorry.
You're not supposed to. If you're working for a major news network, maybe. But, this is something from your heart.
Yes.
And if you cry about it, it means it matters to you.
And sometimes sometimes it's tears of joy. I just cannot, I'm so overwhelmed with everything, with gratitude, with love, and it feels good. That's why I'm forever grateful to God for this. And thank you so much, Dr. Allen, for being here.
Thank you.
No, really, such an honor to have you, and as a friend as well. It's nice to see you always posting on Facebook. It just brightens my day, and it completes my day.
Well, good, good. I'll say this about what we post on Facebook in the ministry group. Every morning before we post, I will ask the Lord, what do you want me to share today?
Really?
Every day I do that. And sometimes I don't hear that voice. So I think, okay, well, I'll go with what I think is good. And there are times where I do hear that voice and I'll post it or I'll type it out or whatever. And usually when I hear that voice, that's when somebody will come in later saying, thank you for saying that, or thank you for doing that, because I've been praying about this, or I've been praying about that. And I have no idea in advance. So it's awesome to see. It's awesome to be somebody the Lord can use for blessing others. And that's not an egotistical thing. That's I'm just a servant. I just want to do what He wants me to do.
Yeah. You
So
are being a vessel, right? Like
right,
God
right.
has used you as an instrument to be a blessing to others, or to help others.
Right. And you are doing the same thing. So that's just keep going, keep pushing.
No, thank you so much. And you are the loveliest, sweetest couple I have ever seen. And thank you so much for being an example. We are younger, and we look up to you and to your wife. And I see, wow, this is where I can say, like, love exists, really love,
It
like
does.
human love, because God's love, I know that exists already in my life, but human
Right.
love gives me hope. And I mean, my marriage, God has restored my marriage. I'm so happy. And yes,
Good.
thank you
I'll
so much.
tell you what. Someday we've done radio talk shows about our marriage and our relationship and how we came together and how the Lord has blessed us. I'm probably going to do something. I don't know if I'll do it on YouTube. Maybe just do it on Facebook Live or something someday on that subject, because
Yes, please. Yes, please.
yeah,
We'll be tuning
the Lord.
in.
Oh yeah, the Lord was. I mean, He worked overtime on bringing us together. So, and then people will say, "Wow, you two are such lovebirds on Facebook. Is that real?" And I will tell them, we're more lovebirds off of Facebook than we are on Facebook. And they look at me like, "Y'all are a couple of freaks." I'm like, okay, but we're happy.
No,
And
such a good example, to the younger ones. Really, I'm not the youngest, but I see that how you respect your wife, how you love her, and how you know uplift her, and same way to your wife too. So and that
she's
is for
amazing.
me a blessing. You see, you may write things on Facebook, but you have no idea what impact it does to the people seeing it and reading it. And it did, in my case, it's a big impact. I'm saying, wow,
Right.
this is a good example. I want to be like them, but like, marriage is a working thing, it's
Right.
not like,
Exactly.
yeah, you have to, because nobody is perfect.
No, nobody is perfect. And when we've been together now 9 years.
Right.
Both of our previous spouses passed away from the same reason.
That is also a coincidence.
Within about 4 months of each.
4 months?
Within 4 months of each other. Yeah. And Penny and I went to high school together, but we didn't know each other in high school. The first time I ever talked to her was at our high school graduation. Now, there were about 400 people graduated that day, okay? And I'm sitting out in the audience, and I'm watching 399 people walk across the stage at graduation. And I remember one. So when she and I first started talking, I was 600 miles away from here.
Yeah.
And she was living here. And we realized that we went to high school together. We're in the same graduating class. Okay, that's awesome, great. Knew the same people, that's great. Then so we started talking about our graduation. And I said, I only remember one person. I remember it was a lady. She wore white shoes. She had shoulder length, kind of dark, wavy hair, kind of short. When she was giving her diploma, somebody from the back of the room jumped up and said, "Way to go," and called out her name. And she kind of shrugged in shyness. She got to the edge of the stage, and that person ran down front to the stage, gave her this big, massive bouquet of flowers. Everybody in the auditorium, 1,000 people, go, oh, and I'm telling the story, and she goes, Alan, it was what? I said, what you remember was me.
Gosh.
I described even what color her shoes were 30 some odd years after our graduation. Oops. So, how long has the Lord been setting this one up for,
This is really, this is good. It's like a film, and with a nice ending. That's what all Americans wants to see. A nice ending, and that is with your story. Oh my gosh, I cannot stop crying. It's just like coming and coming. I'm very sorry. But
no, it's okay.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For being a blessing to me and to the future viewers and to everyone who knows you. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you for what you do, and I know God's going to bless you and this channel and everything you're doing in an amazing way. I want to thank your listeners, and if anybody wants to reach out to us, feel free to do so. Facebook is the best way to do it. We're under Royal Ministry, and we're happy to hear from anybody. Love to see the comments on the video as well. So, if anybody has a question, they can ask a question in the comments for this video too, and I'll come in and talk to them also.
Yes, and we will paste your link below to your Facebook link.
Right. Okay.
And also the name. Then it's easy for them to search too. Yeah,
sure.
Thank you. And have a nice and blessed Sunday still, huh? Because there it's still
yes.